Number one is have a business plan. And number two, figure out legally what's needed in your state to start. Make sure that from the beginning, you're structured correctly, because restructuring things after, very complicated. And then number three is figuring out like how you're going to market.
This is the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.
Well, hey, everybody, it's Bref, and we're back with another episode of the Aesthetics Growth Podcast. And today I'm really excited to welcome a really interesting guest. We've got Sara Shikhman, who's the managing partner at Lengea Law, which is a leading healthcare law firm that specializes in solutions for med spas, for aesthetics practices. Sara's got a bunch, over 2 decades of experience that I'm hoping we can kind of get some golden nuggets from today. She's also, author of MedSpa Confidential, a bestseller on Amazon. And Sara, I'm super excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Super excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, let's jump in. We'd love to learn more about your story. How did you get to be here? You're in NYC today. You're running a law firm. You've got a vast history within aesthetics. How the heck did all this start?
Well, I've always been an entrepreneur. Ever since I was young, I was helping people with lots of different things. And I've always loved helping people, like helping them start a business, helping them launch their first product. And so when I was practicing law at a big firm, a friend of mine said, I'm starting an online furniture company. Can you come be our CEO? And I said, but I don't know much about furniture. They said, no problem. You are the kind of person that I know can figure it out. And so I started this furniture company, grew it from literally one person to a team of over 100, many millions in revenue. And then I met my husband, who was a doctor, and he said, well, I want to start a med spa. And we started a med spa in Columbus, Ohio, and grew that med spa to 12 locations in, I think, a little under 4 years. And all throughout that journey, people were always asking me for legal advice, how to start a med spa, how to compliantly bring on a partner, how to sell, how to fire a problem employee. And then I decided to start this law firm in 2019. And now we have a team around the world helping people start med spas, grow them, and everything in between.
Incredible. Wow. So there's a bunch of different journeys kind of bundled in there together. From that furniture store, scaling it to, over 100 employees. How did that set you on your way to, to get into the legal field? Was there education involved there as well? It sounds like you got a lot of stuff accomplished there over that. I know that was the skinny version of the story, but would love to dig a little deeper.
Yeah. In that experience, I learned that you could have an amazing product, but even if it's amazing, if nobody knows about it, if you don't have good marketing, you don't really have much to go on. And then I also learned that you could have an amazing product, but if you don't have good legal, then the first time somebody sues you, you're going to have a really big problem. And so those lessons I took when we were starting our aesthetics practice too. And then now helping people start practices, it's something I see every day where it's kind of like legal is one part of it, and it's the foundation where you need a strong foundation to build a house, but it's only one part. There are other really important parts too, like marketing, like having good systems, like hiring the right people.
For sure. I know that, before the chat here, something that I wrote down as well was, prevention is better than cure, which certainly relays into the world of aesthetics as well. What was it like when you first got started with your husband's side of the business? Was he your first client essentially? And then did you scale through to other practices from there?
Yeah, essentially. And interestingly enough, one of our first clients, like in terms of a client who came in to get services, was my ex-boyfriend. So thinking about like who could be good as initial clients, right? People think, well, I need to do lots of marketing or need to do a big Instagram campaign for my first client. Sometimes it's just friends and family, or in some case, your ex-boyfriend. In my case, it was my ex-boyfriend and his new girlfriend. They, came into town and we were like, okay, well, we'll treat you as long as you let us use your before and afters and videos on social media.
Awesome. Now, so take us back to the med spa, and you still own and operate that med spa as part of your portfolio?
No. So one lesson I learned in this whole process is it's really complex running a business and being married to someone at the same time. So in that process, we got divorced. We separated out the businesses. He kept the med spa business and I started the law firm.
Gotcha. Okay. And so take us back to starting the law firm. You mentioned, word of mouth kind of got it started. You spoke a little bit about marketing. Sara, what was it like scaling your business, the law firm? Because what I'm hearing from this is, as you were scaling your business, you're helping other med spas and aesthetics practices to scale their businesses with a good foundation.
Yeah, it was really hard at first. I had some contacts from the industry, and they called me and they said, "Can you help me start a med spa?" And I I was doing everything myself. And at first I had 1, 2, 10 clients, and that was fine. And then I had 100 clients all of a sudden. And then I was like, oh my gosh, um, I'm overwhelmed. I need to hire people. I need to have better systems. Same things that I needed, when I started the aesthetics business, same things I needed when I started the furniture business. And it was good because I felt like I could really relate to my clients because they were on a very similar journey that I was on. Many of them were female entrepreneurs. Many of them were starting a business for the first time. And they really needed the guidance so that they could be set up correctly and not have big problems and be able to sleep at night. And it was great. Some of my clients, I have ones that started with me with like a single salon suite type of room. And then now we've helped them sell their practice to private equity for over $3 million. So
Wow.
it's kind of amazing and super fulfilling to do that.
I love that. I love that. As you were getting started, because every business is about solving problems, what did you find were some of the biggest problems, or kind of those almost like frequent problems that you were hearing from practice owners that you started to solve?
Well, one problem was, do I start small or where do I start? What's the first thing I should do? Should I open an LLC? Should I hire a medical director? Should I, talk to my financial advisor? Should I take out a loan for, $100,000? So one problem was figuring out where to start and how to start. A lot of states make it a little complex because they have this thing called the prohibition on the corporate practice of medicine, which is this whole mouthful, which essentially means if you're not a physician, you can't just start an LLC and have that LLC be your medical company, because those states don't allow that to happen. So you need a little bit of a legal structure to make it happen. And whenever I say the prohibition on the corporate practice of medicine, people usually, are half asleep or say, well, what does that mean? So the conversation usually begins there.
Right. And I'm sure there's, especially from state to state, there's a lot of complexity. And what you mentioned just with prohibition in itself, there's obviously a mouthful associated with that. How do you take that from those initial getting started, whether it's LLC or partnership? How typically do you see that legal foundation opening up that pathway that you see your clients? And we're kind of talking right now about like starting the business. So those med spas that are starting out, what do those stepping stones typically look like, Sara?
Yeah. So a lot of times people have a complicated idea at first. And my approach is always, let's keep it simple. Let's try to start in the simplest way possible, because that'll be the easiest path for you to then later change or adapt if you need to kind of pivot a little bit in your strategy, which a lot of people do. So if people come and they have 3, 4, 5 different partners that they want to start with, we always advocate on creating a simpler structure, saying like, do you really want to give equity? Like, do you really want to get married to one of your partners from day one? How well do you know them? Let's think about you starting with just you, or maybe you and one partner, and then get that in writing. Let's get an operating agreement together. Let's get a partnership document. And let's file your paperwork to start the company, so that you're not doing lots of things before that, so that later it becomes a big mess to clean up where no one's sure what money was spent and where it went.
Right. Okay. So someone's listening, and we've got as a growing listenership, we've got different stages of business like there is. So someone's getting started out. What are the first 3 things that they should do even before they, open up they hang out their shingle?
I think they should have a business plan. Number one is write down like what it is that you're going to do. It doesn't have to be a super fancy business plan. And of course, now with lots of AI tools, you could have one written for you very quickly, but figure out what is it that you're going to sell and what's going to be like your key value proposition. Is it that you're going to offer some unique service? Is it going to be some packages? Is it your unique location? Whatever. So I think number one is have a business plan. And number 2 is figure out legally what's needed in your state to start. Make sure that from the beginning, you're structured correctly, because restructuring things after, very complicated. And then number 3 is figuring out like how you're going to market your product, because without a marketing plan, your business is not going to be successful.
For sure. That's awesome. Three pillars right there. Number one, you've got to have something to sell. You've got to be able to communicate that in a unique way, like you mentioned, have that legal foundation in place, get set up correctly, and then spread the message through marketing. Now, Sarah, do you essentially help with those three stages? How does that typically work when you're working with med spas, for example, or helping your clientele?
Yeah, so we definitely help with the legal part. And then if people need help with the marketing or business plan, we refer them to marketing consultants. I think that it's good to work with experts in their particular field. So yeah, I understand marketing, but I'm not as great at marketing as a marketing agency would be. Just like a marketing agency probably can't do legal. So I think that for us, we help them set up the legal foundation, and then we refer people for other things that they may need.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. And how about like when it comes to some of the, unfortunately, in business, we have to fix problems, right? So maybe you see mistakes. What are some of those common mistakes that you'll see people make? And it's almost that moment where you wish, oh, if I just spoken to you 6 months ago.
Yeah, I think one mistake is partnering with the wrong person. So sometimes people start, and that happens. It's usually when the people are coming to it from very different perspectives. Like, for example, one person wants to be the silent partner and just put in the money, and one person wants to be the operator. And that's fine, but you have to have that clearly spelled out. Okay, so are you going to make a salary, or are you going to make just distributions? Is your partner really never going to come to the business, or what is each person's expectation? So we have this partnership questionnaire that we send out to our clients to help them clarify their partnership in the beginning, so that people avoid these big mistakes later and fights. And we've seen partnerships where people, start fighting, and then the whole partnership falls apart, and so much money is spent on legal that there's nothing left over in the business.
That's a big one, right? Because there's the money aspect, there's the time that goes into this, there's the resources, there's the frustration. So that's great. You'll send out the partnership questionnaire so they can complete that. Is there any other mistakes, common mistakes that you see? I can see that being a massive one, by the way, because that is, so important. It's relationship building. Any other common mistakes that you typically see?
Yeah, I think mistakes with hiring and firing. So we all have heard, hire slow and fire quickly, but somehow in practice, that seems very hard to do. I understand for sure. You meet a great candidate, you love them, you have them start, and then 2 weeks later, you're like, okay, sign our non-compete and sign our employment contract, or maybe 1 year later, or maybe never. And you get into this problem where someone started already, but you're having them sign paperwork and they don't want to. So that's a problem we see all the time. And then it's really hard to enforce a non-compete that was never signed. It's nearly impossible. So we always recommend having your employment paperwork done before you hire someone. And so on their first day, they already have everything signed. So that's a big one that we see, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'll hear that quite a bit over at ClinicGrower and speaking with medical spas and practice owners. That one particularly, when it comes to, in the aesthetic space, the non-competes, or somebody left me a couple of months ago and they took a bunch of clients. So really appreciate that, having that foundation, having that roadmap in place so that you can protect your business. And also, as we're talking about here, setting just the right expectations from the get-go versus having to kind of change the playing field or come in and edit the situation as the relationship is ongoing.
Yeah, definitely. It's a document that protects you and protects the team member, because you will have in writing, like, what's the job description? Is it your expectation that, let's say they're the front desk person, is it your expectation that if they have downtime that they're going to make calls? Or is it your expectation that if they have downtime, they can just sit there on their phone? I would put that in the job description too. When you have downtime, our expectation is you do this.
Of that, we were at an event recently where that, once there was some of the attendees had heard about that, the downtime term in the contract, it got so much attention. And I think that that's something maybe just worth expanding on. Do you see that most practices are putting that into agreements right now, or is that something that is optional for the business owner? How do you see that?
I see most people not doing it, but I don't think it's optional. I think it's absolutely needed. You could put it in a lot of different ways. You could say, for example, your job description is X, Y, and Z, and other tasks as maybe assigned to you by your management. So you don't have to really explicitly say during your downtime, do this. But the more explicit you are, the less potential for confusion or misunderstandings there are. And in this industry, in the employment side, there are lots of potential for misunderstandings and confusion. And connected to this is the training reimbursement contract piece, right? So many people have injectors and other staff get training from you, but 6 months later or a month or even a month later, and they go work, 10 miles away.
Yeah, this is awesome. And I think people listening will get so much value from this. At ClinicGrower, we help some of our practices by providing a job scorecard, which is kind of like performance. It's helping from that overall performance standpoint. But what you're talking about here is, I think, really, really important for the listeners to make sure that you have that when hiring and onboarding new team members, so that again, it's about protecting both sides there, the business, right, and the team member expectation and performance. And is there any tips that you would give anybody is listening as to how they can best do that, get those fundamentals set up?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we have a template library for these contracts that's available to our clients. So if someone signs up with us, with our legal team, they have forms that they can just pull. If they don't want to spend a lot of money on them, they can literally use our training reimbursement template or offer letter template or employment contract template. So I would say using one of these comprehensive pieces of paper is really good. I know where everyone is using AI these days, so using something from AI is better than doing nothing. So having something in writing, having it signed before someone starts, and then also having the conversation with someone and really setting the expectation. Like, look, I'm hiring you. We're going to invest a lot of money in you. My expectation is you're going to be here for at least 2 years. Is that your expectation too?
Fantastic. You said something really interesting. We spoke about AI a couple of times, and the usage is increasing. What would you say to people that are doing just that? They're going, type me up a employee agreement contract, and they're working with that. Like you said, it's better than nothing. However, I'm sure you've got some commentary on that as well. It's probably not the be all and end all, right?
Yeah, it's better than nothing. I would say, look, if all you can do is use AI and you can't afford to use a lawyer, it's better to do that than to do nothing. At the same time, it's better to have a lawyer who will protect you in case there's some problem, right? With AI, like if there's a problem with the contract, we all know that there are these hallucinations or mistakes that AI makes. So a lot of times when I ask AI, well, what's the regulation in this state on this? Many times it's incorrect. And then I say, wait, no, that's incorrect. The correct answer is the AI says, I'm sorry, you're right, it's incorrect. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so I think using AI is a little complex right now because there are times when it's wrong. And there are legal solutions that are pretty affordable where it's not that much more expensive to have a real lawyer review your stuff. And then if there's an issue, we can protect you.
Sarah, when it comes to kind of that roadmap, if you will, what does that look like when somebody, for example, works with you? There's certain pillars essentially that you can help them with. Would you mind just explaining how that comes together? Because the realm of law and legal can be so vast and it can be confusing for some people. But if you're going to break it down as to how you typically work with clients and maybe the stages of growth and how you support them, I think that would be awesome to hear.
Sure, yeah. So when we onboard a new client, let's say they're starting a practice. So first we would form their legal entities. We would help them find a medical director if they need one, if they don't have one already. We would do the contracts between them and the medical director. And then we would do the contracts between them and their patient. So the consents and the protocols and all the things you need to have in the office. And then we would cover things like OSHA and HIPAA and website policies and things like that. So once someone's fully set up and they have all the paperwork, next stage would be growth, right? They would have paperwork for hiring people. They would have paperwork for opening new locations. And then if there's a problem, like let's say you have a surprise visit from an investigator, which is happening more and more, we would represent you to them. So meaning you don't have to talk to them. You would just call us and say, hey, an investigator stopped by, and we would handle it. And then moving on more to the fun stuff, if it's time to sell your practice, we help people find buyers. We do the contracts between buyers and sellers. And then we also do investments. So sometimes people are looking for either an SBA loan or they have an investor coming in. We'll do the paperwork for that too. So it's kind of like we're your outside legal counsel that you call whenever you need us. So you don't have to have a full-time lawyer sitting in your practice.
Awesome. Totally comprehensive by the sounds of it. Sarah, what does it look like then when it comes to, you, the business? What are you seeing as far as any industry trends? You mentioned, the investigators coming in is on the rise. Anything else that you're seeing in the industry that would be helpful to share?
Yeah, I see a big shift from things like Botox and fillers to more regenerative medicine and preventative medicine and things like hormone replacement, peptides, IVs, things like that. So I think there's a lot more service offerings that people are doing. And then there are a lot more products on the market, right? It used to be that it was just a few brands of toxin. Now there are lots of new ones. So I think prices of some things will come down with competition, which is good for the market, right? So we don't have to buy the most expensive toxin anymore. There's lots of other alternatives. At the same time, I see a lot more regulation coming, especially in the field of things like exosomes, stem cells, things like that, where right now there's not a lot of regulation, but there is lots of stuff pending in a couple of different states.
Interesting. Now, when it comes to those changing regulations, how involved do you get with the implications of those regulations with practices?
We get super involved. So we have a full-time person on our staff that all he does all day long is look for new regulations that are pending across the country. So first of all, we're on top of the regulations. And second of all, if something is close to being passed, we always let our clients know. We talk about what needs to change in their paperwork. So yeah, the changing regulations is something that we're talking to people all the time, and we're doing client alerts and blog posts and email newsletters about that. I mean, every couple of weeks.
Awesome. Love it. Sara, I want to just ask you a little bit about your book, if you don't mind sharing as well, MedSpa Confidential. Could you just explain a little bit about that to anybody who perhaps hasn't read the book?
Yeah, sure. So a few years ago, a friend of mine who had a practice in Columbus, Ohio, that she sold for a large number of money, several $1 million, wanted to write a book about starting her practice and selling her practice. And I wanted to write a book about helping lots of people start their practice and sell their practices. So we got together, me and this doctor, and we wrote this book together. And it was really like a labor of love, and also about sharing the knowledge that we learned over doing this for so many years. And it was a great process. And I never thought the book would be so successful and sell thousands of copies. I just kind of thought it'd be like one of those books that my parents buy and my friends buy. But yeah, it's been wonderful. So many people say, "Oh, I read your book, MedSpa Confidential. Like it was great. It changed my life." Wow. Okay, that's amazing.
Excellent. Okay. Well, congrats on that. And what else is next for you when it comes to what you're doing? You've got multiple businesses. You obviously scaling practices with Lengea Law. What's next on the horizon for you, Sara?
Just want to grow this practice and help grow this industry. Like I love these products. I love helping people. Like as long as I get to do that, I'm happy. Like I feel like I found my passion, one of those things where you wake up and you're excited to go to work. That's how I feel. I feel like it's so great to have calls from clients who say like, "Hey, your advice like changed my life," or "What you told me last year about my practice and what I implemented like saved me from this big legal problem." Like I want to continue doing that.
That's awesome. Yeah, nothing like hearing about the results and the impacts for what you're doing. Sara, if you wouldn't mind entertaining me, are you willing to participate in our rapid fire round? A couple of questions coming at you.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, cool. Quick question. So when it comes to events, industry events, what are your top two?
I think that the top two are Aesthetic Next and the MedSpa show.
Okay, cool. Now, if you weren't doing what you're doing in the legal space, what might you be doing?
I think I would start some kind of business company that supports med spas. I don't know exactly what it would do yet, but that would be interesting to me. But I love what I'm doing, so I'm happy to do this.
Awesome. How about with the travel that you do? Is there any particular favorite destinations that you've been to, whether it's for a show or just business or personal?
Yeah, I love Bali. I love Australia. I love Europe. I love traveling. So I think most places that I've been to, I've really enjoyed. There's something awesome about being away from the day to day. And that's where some of my best ideas come to me too.
For sure. Getting that inspiration. How about when it comes to the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Yeah. The best piece of advice I've ever received is bet on yourself. Sometimes we're all scared to go out on our own, or we're scared to take a chance. But if you're not going to bet on yourself, who will, right? Life is short. So try it. I think betting on yourself is something that everyone should try at least once in their lives.
Excellent. For sure. That's awesome. Great inspiration for anybody listening. And how about when it comes to any other pearls of wisdom or anything else you might like to relay with any of the medical entrepreneurs and practice owners who were listening to the show?
Yeah, start small. You don't have to have a big fancy build out or buy a $1 million machine to start your practice. You can start with 1 room or 2 rooms. Then it's much easier to pivot. It's much easier to have money left over for marketing. And you could always get that huge space that you wanted, but you don't have to start there.
Great intelligence and information for the listeners there. How about, Sarah, when it comes to just learning more about what you're doing, or for anybody who might be interested to get in touch and reach out and learn more about what you're doing over at Lengea Law?
Yeah, people can go to our website, which is lengealaw.com. You could click on free call and you could schedule a free consultation with us. And we'd love to learn more about what you're trying to do and how we can help you. And check us out online. We are on Instagram and TikTok and all the things. But just know this. There are going to be hard times in this business and there are going to be wonderful times. And it's the strongest of the species that survives, not the smartest, but really the most perseverant. So perseverance, I think, is everything.
So I've got to dig a little bit deeper on that one, because I think that's absolute gold advice for anybody listening. We talk about building a business and entrepreneurship and resilience. What are some of those tools that you've used over the years to do just that? You know, life isn't always roses and unicorns. For anybody who's listening who might be going through one of those periods where there's economic or personal, they've got to push through. Anything that you would share with them, Sarah?
Yeah, I think you have to focus on your strengths, right? Well, we all have strengths and they're different. But if you really dig in on your strengths and go from there, you can really get out of a lot of different positions where maybe you're in some kind of business funk. So for me, right, it was like 2019. I was in the middle of a divorce, right? We're separating the business. I was like, what am I going to do? And I said, okay, I need to focus on my strengths, right? What are my strengths? Building a business, helping people, right? So I realized myself, I don't need a big Fifth Avenue office to start a law firm. I could start one right in my living room. And that's what I did. And that's what I tell my clients to do. So I'm kind of a follower of my own advice too.
I love that. And actually that resonates very closely to my story as well. It was back in really 2015 when, I mean, a little bit before that, but I traveled around and working corporate, had the initiative to start a business to help others outside of just working in companies that sold products, essentially. Same thing, kitchen table, bootstrapping, helping one person, having that one person tell someone how much of a good job you're doing, whether it's on your legal side or also with our medical aesthetic practices that are helping clientele and getting that word of mouth, just really getting that foundation in place. And then, as you were saying, with that foundation in place, you've got a good structure, is then been able to take that and then layer in the marketing and advertising and those sorts of things. So thanks for that share. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So people can get in touch. I recommend anybody who's listening, reach out to Sarah. She just offered that free consultation, right?
Yep, free consultation. Schedule it right on my website.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for joining us on the show. Really appreciate you being here. It was great to learn, and I'm sure our listeners will have some questions for you if they get in touch with our free consultation.
Thanks, Bref. Thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, it's Bref here with ClinicGrower, and I've got a quick favor to ask. If you're loving the Aesthetics Growth podcast, go ahead and hit that like or hit that subscribe, more importantly, so that we can keep bringing you the best of the industry. I really want this to be impactful and the highest quality, and the best way that you can help us to do that is to hit that like, hit that subscribe. And remember, if you would like to be a guest on the Aesthetics Growth podcast, go to clinicgrower.com/podcast.
This is the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.